Hello and welcome to another episode of Learning to Live in the Present Moment. My name is Ted Robinson and I'm your host today. Today we're going to be talking about the present moment and what it means and what learning to live in the present moment really is all about. So first I want to clarify one thing. I am not a teacher. I am a student sharing with you what I've learned so far. And by sharing with it, what I find for me is it clarifies it for me and helps me really sort of put all the pieces together, because I read constantly. I'm always watching videos and attending seminars and things and teaching quite a bit here and sharing what I know. And when I do that, it tends to build the neural pathways in my mind so that I can remember it better and present it better and more clearly each time, hopefully. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm a student sharing with you whatever I've learned so far, and I presume that you're going to share things with me and others are going to share things with me as we all learn to live in the present moment together. And that's the idea here. Learning to live in the present moment is, in fact, my goal. But you know, the problem with a goal is every time you have a goal, your ego gets involved with it, and then it becomes something to practice, and then it's no longer presence. So you can't really practice presence. All you can do is just be present. And that's a clarification I want to share with you. Something that came from Leonard Jacobson, my mentor. So first things first, when I say learning to live in the present moment or living in the present moment, what I'm really referring to is not being present all the time. You don't have to be present 24/7 every day, every week. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't have to do that. In fact, it's not even advisable. Presence is something that you come back to. Once you're finished with your mind, doing whatever you've had to do, once you've figured everything out, once you've gotten all the work done that you had to do with your mind, once you've made all your schedules and your appointments and considered all the things that you've learned from the past and applied them to the present moment and the future, what are you going to do with your mind then? Keep it entertained? You can. But really the bottom line of it is what you really want to do at the end of that, all that mind stuff, is come back to presence. Come back to just being here now. And that's what learning to live in the present moment is all about. That's what living in the present moment is about. Come back to presence every time you're not thinking about something else. Make that the place to come back to. It's the place, it's almost a gap between the thoughts. When you come back to presence, instead of just throwing into your mind and thinking, well, what am I going to do next? How can I do? You know, when I first started my life, when I was very young, and then all through high school and college, I noticed something about myself that was very experiential, let's put it that way. I learned a lot from it. I noticed that I could not allow for a gap in a conversation. I always had to fill the gap. Are you like that yourself? Do you know anybody like it? I would say some of the most inane things possible just so there wouldn't be silence. That's how strong my ego was. And so for me, it's been a very long journey. Perhaps for you, perhaps not. But just because you're silent either doesn't mean you're necessarily present. Presence is a specific thing. It's just being here without the mind being in operation. The conscious mind, that is. Your mind will always be in operation or you'd just die. There's a part of your mind that has to always operate, right? But the part that I'm talking about, the part that does all the thinking and all the justifying and rationalizing and figuring out of things, that's the conscious mind. That's the ego mind. And candidly, that's the part of you and me that gets us into trouble and suffering. Why? Because the conscious mind is filled with judgments. And that's a good thing in most instances. You need judgment every day. This is the anomaly of the whole thing. This is the irony of the whole thing. You need to have a conscious mind or an ego that will make choices for you, make judgments for you. Very important. If you didn't have the ability to make a judgment, how would you know where to go or how to get there? Or what to eat or what you want or how to dress, who you want to talk to, what you're going to say? All those things are a factor of judgment. So we need that. Here's where the problem is and where suffering comes from. It's when we now address everything in the world that's going on in our world through the ego. And we have expectations. We know what we want. And we want the most perfect Sweet 16 party for our children. We want the best education. We want the greatest job. You want a perfect spouse. We want to have wonderful, healthy grandchildren. And if any part of it goes wrong, what happens? The ego goes right to work. It shouldn't be this way. I wanted it that way, and it's now this way. It's not right. Why me, God? That's what you hear a lot. That's what I hear a lot. Because people's egos have gotten in the way of their living their life. Why me? How could this have happened to me? And by the way, I don't for a moment disagree that some terrible things can beset us. Cancers, heart attacks, sudden deaths, accidents, all kinds of things can happen. There's no doubt about that. But it's all in how you deal with it. Whether you take responsibility for your own actions, or you must find somebody to blame, or you must complain about it. That's when you get into trouble. That's when the ego has grabbed a hold of you and is just shaking the heck out of you for dear life. Because it's not supposed to be this way. And therein lies the problem. You can't be present when you're in your ego. Cannot. Absolute. So the only way to be present is to quiet the ego mind. And sometimes that can be a little tough for some people. I mean, people come into my group in this very room and they tell me my mind never shuts down, never shuts up. It's just constantly at me all day long. What about that? And how could he have said that? Why did she do that? And it goes on and on and on. It's like a little gerbil on a gerbil wheel going round and around and around. And you know, statistically, scientists have proven that about 90% of your thoughts have about 90,000, I think it's either 60 or 90,000 thoughts that you have a day are of the same things. It just goes back and revisits the same stuff over and over and over and over and over again. And the reason I went on like that is because that's what the mind does. Learning to live in the present moment is breaking free of the tyranny of the mind. And I say tyranny purposely. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, a bad entity. It's just your mind. It does what it does. The tyranny is that it keeps you locked into the past, the future, and judgment. And when you're locked into those things, you cannot be present. So, the way in which I'm talking about this is to recognize what the present moment is, which is just this. Or it might be playing basketball and a blind pass over to the guy next to you or the woman next to you. It might be riding your bicycle through the streets and the leaves are falling, or the sun is out. It could be going to the beach and lying there listening to the waves. It could be anything you wish, as long as your judgmental mind is out of the way. Instead of going to the beach and just enjoying the day, it's like, oh, this sand is bad. Oh, look at those waves. There are no waves. Oh, look at those waves. They're too big. That would not be presence. Presence would be, this. Do you see the difference? And that's what I'm talking about here. That's what the whole purpose of the show is. To encourage you to recognize what the present moment is and to achieve it. And that's what all this is about. Again, I'm a student. I'm constantly learning. I'm constantly being tested by my own ego. I'm constantly being tested by everyone around me that my ego judges. You get that? It's not them. They're just doing what they're doing. It's my ego that judges everybody. You ever find that happening? Somebody cuts you off. Somebody double parks. You have to go around them into an oncoming lane of traffic, and a big truck's coming your way. And how do you feel about that guy or woman? So the idea is all of these things are my judgmental ego playing on me, and my job, my determination, is to become present more often. Now, I'll be back in a moment to tell you how to do that, so don't go away. Be right back. Welcome back. So how you do that is by becoming mindful of your mind's activities as they're happening. And how do you do that? Well, there's a part of you that's always watching everything. I call it the watcher. It's pretty simple. And you can sort of imagine it's sort of like this. I can't see that right now there. I can just see my fingers now. But there it is, watching the whole playing field in front of me. Busily watching. But what it's watching mostly is my ego. My ego comes out to play, so to speak. It comes out to be angry at this guy that cut me off in traffic. It gets angry when somebody double parks in front of me and I've got to be inconvenienced or I've got to be endangered because of that person. And so the watcher is that part that sits up here and watches the ego get angry. And as soon as the ego is aware of that, it goes like this and pulls back like the head of a turtle, sucks it right back in. Doesn't like to be seen, the ego. The ego does not like to be seen being angry, being small-minded, being petulant. You follow? So the best thing to do to change your ego's behaviors, if you don't like them, and by and large, I can tell you most egotistical or egocentric actions are not real likable, is just become mindful and watch them. And as soon as you see it, you don't have to say, hey, don't do that. You don't do that at all. You just watch, and the ego feels it. I mean, remember, this is all a mental construct we're doing here. And the ego pulls back. It doesn't want to be seen being small-minded, thick, or angry, or stubborn. So it'll immediately change its behavior patterns as soon as you become mindful enough to watch it. Even if you watch it and don't realize it for a second or two until after it's done, the next time it'll be less virulent. It'll be less willing to be out there going after somebody. It'll be checking to see if the watcher's there. You follow? And that's the idea of the watcher. It's just mindfulness in action. When you're mindful like that, your ego's behavior will be eliminated by and large. At the very least, it'll be limited. And eventually, if you continue using your mindfulness to watch the ego, you'll start to see it before it brings itself out to be angry with somebody or upset with somebody or stubborn about something. And right in the middle of being stubborn or hard-headed, it'll pull back. That's the idea. That's what you want. Because why is that? Why do you want that? Because you know it doesn't serve you well. It doesn't serve me well. I know that. When I'm angry with something, it's mostly because I'm worried that somebody was going to cut me off and knock me off the road and hurt me or injure me. That's why I get upset. Because I'm worried. Or I'm embarrassed. It's another way in which I can get fearful or of embarrassment. I hate to be embarrassed. So if I get embarrassed, I get angry. These are the things I watch for in me. What are the things in you that you watch for? What are the things that you know you do habitually, but don't serve you very well? Do you get angry? Do you get resentful? Do you get judgmental? Do you start thinking about what's going to happen in the future? How you can get back at somebody? Vengefulness? All these things are the ego in action. If you find yourself being any of those, you might want to even make a little list of them. And then get your watcher ready. Is he going to be vengeful? Is she going to be angry? And as soon as it happens, let the mind see it. As soon as the mind sees it, the ego will stop it. Again, you don't have to say, no, 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 don't do that. There doesn't have to be any correction. Just mindfulness. That's very important to know. Because when you're mindful like that, everything will change. Everything. Now, the gap between thoughts is effectively consciousness, pure consciousness. And that's where the watcher comes from. It's your own consciousness in action, changing your behavior through mindfulness. I hope that helps. I'll be back in a minute to explain more. Don't go away. Welcome back. So I want to tell you about something else that's important to this discussion. And that is that we each have two purposes in our lifetime. That's right, an inner purpose and an outer purpose. Your inner purpose is the same as my inner purpose. We all share the same identical inner purpose. That is to awaken from this dream we call our lives. It's mostly, when I say awaken from this dream, it's awakening from the ego's construction of what life is all about. He cut me off, I have to get him back. She broke up with me, I have to have a vendetta against her. The ego's belief system has made us believe in a world that's really not real. However, our waking up will change that. As I was talking about the watcher, that's how you awaken. But it's only part of it, because ultimately the whole point of awakening is awakening from the dream of this conscious state we're in, using our conscious minds. And this is where the language gets a little bit befuddled, because I'm saying the conscious mind. Let's just use the ego mind for now. The ego's belief systems that has made up our construct of life is one picture of the world. But the reality is different than that. And the whole idea is to awaken out of the dream of the ego and just become present. That's the awakened state. In fact, you are awakened the moment you're present, but just for that moment. Now, if you're awake for 2 moments, if you're present for two moments, then you're awakened for 2 moments. And you can piece them together and make longer periods if you want, and eventually become awakened from the dream of the ego. That's what that means. Now, you also, and by the way, we all have that same purpose in life. The only difference is not everybody's willing or ready to awaken. Most people don't even know that it exists. So if you're close to awakening, if you even understand what this is all about, then you're going to awaken at some point in the future. In fact, everybody is going to awaken at some point in the future. It just may take many lifetimes to get that to that point. So, and then again, there's nothing wrong with this. Nobody's ahead or behind. Everybody who's here can teach one another. It's just different points of self-remembrance, of remembering who you are, which is a part of God. You know, before we're born, we are just pure consciousness. And then we become who we are. We inhabit these bodies as a soul. And we remain immortal the whole time. It's just the body can come and go, and it does. There's a limited shelf life, so to speak. There's a limited time on earth that each body has. Some longer, some shorter. But each time, the soul that inhabits that body remains afterwards. It's immortal. It's part of God directly. But I mean part of the Spirit of God. Not just part of God because it's omnipresent. So the idea here is to learn to awaken. And you do that through presence. The more and more present you become, the more you make presence your default state, the more awakened you become. And that's your purpose here on life. That's your purpose here on earth. You share it with everyone. Now, the outer purpose, the secondary purpose, is your outer purpose in life. And that's what you do for a living. That's what you do in life. You might raise children. You might go to work. You might be a student or a professor or a tax man or a cab driver or a cop or a doctor or an Indian chief. It doesn't really much matter. Because in every one of those positions, you're going to learn things. You're going to have experiences. And from every experience, you're going to learn something that's going to bring you closer and closer to awakening. Because your secondary purpose, your outer purpose, is here eventually to join with your inner purpose. So your inner purpose is just coming straight up. The outer purpose may go out a little ways, may come back in, it may go out, but it's always, always to be here together. I call that congruency. When they're traveling along with one another, they are congruent. Your inner purpose and your outer purpose are the same or substantially the same, and they're both moving you towards awakening. Now, what I've done in my life, I was a sculptor for 10 years. I was a student before then. I became a sculptor. Then I became a lawyer, and I still am a lawyer. But I became a minister about 10 years ago, and now I'm doing healing work. And this is the kind of work that is my truest passion right now. And the thing that I like about it, and I'm not trying to brag about it, but the thing I like about it is, for me, it's congruent with awakening, which is my purpose. I know it's my inner purpose, but I also know it's my outer purpose. And that's why I do these talks. Because I want to become present more of the time, much of the time, most of the time. And I want to share that with you as well. We can do this together. Like I said, I'm a student. I'm just teaching what I've learned so far. And there's plenty more to learn for me and for you. Perhaps you can teach me, and I'll be happy to sit out there and watch, and you can teach. The idea is congruency between the inner and outer purpose will bring you a great deal of satisfaction, and it will bring you closer and closer to awakening quicker and quicker. That's the idea. So, to do that, you want to be more and more present in your outer purpose, your daily grind, so to speak. So if you're making signs, if you're a legal secretary or a paralegal, if you're a film editor, if you're a teacher, the real quest for you is to find more ways within that outer purpose that you maintain to make a living and support yourself and your family, to find more ways within that secondary purpose, that outer purpose, to be present. Perhaps the only thing you can do is you apply yourself, and at the completion of your applying your mind to the issues at hand, you then go back to presence. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with any of that. There's nothing wrong with anything, in fact. Because everything you do, every action you take, you learn from it. You gain greater experience. You learn from it. You find out what works and what doesn't. You do more of what works and less of what doesn't. That's called experience. When you get enough experience under your belt, you actually become wise. So that means you have to make mistakes to become wise eventually, right? Otherwise, how would you know which direction to go? Try a little of this, try a little of that. They don't work. Well, we'll try a little closer to the center till finally we're here. Coming back to presence again. When you're finding your way in life and having these experiences, you actually are allowing yourself and God to have those experiences, because God experiences life on earth through each of us. See, God is part of that soul. God is that soul within us. And we're experiencing through this body life on earth, either in presence or in the ego mind. It's a choice. And you get to make that choice every day. If you make choices that don't serve you well and that don't work out well, then what do you want to do? Make another choice. Change your mind. Do something different until it does work. And when it does work, you're going to find yourself much happier. Much happier. Because as you change your choices, you'll become more and more and more present. Again, consistent with awakening. The more you bring presence into your life through your outer purpose, the more your inner purpose becomes completed. The whole idea is to be awakened in this lifetime, if you can. And you can't use that as a goal. All you can do is be present. Like that. This is presence now. In this moment, I'm awakened. If you come into presence with me, you are too. Then we can go back to talking and doing whatever we're going to do. But in that moment, you're awakened. That's the idea to remember. And that's the purpose of life and being present in life. And that's why we want to learn to live in the present moment together. I hope this has been helpful to you. Remember, we have a weekly meeting here on Wednesday evenings for 2 hours from 7 to 9 p.m. here at our Center for Inner Healing located at 26 St. Paul's Place, Hempstead, New York. And we have a tapathon on Sunday nights at right now until Daylight Savings Time, 8 p.m. And that goes for about an hour. And you'll get the numbers off of our website under tapathon at centerforinnerhealing.com. So that's a bit about it for now. We look forward to seeing you same time, same place next week as we learn to live in the present moment together. Have a wonderful day.